thank you everybody for joining us. This is Corporate Programs and their Standard Work A3 project, and I'm going to leave the floor to you guys.
Okay, I'll start. When Lean was introduced, one of the tools that took off in corporate programs was standard work. We say it took off, like it really, really took off. We were all excited. We were standard work happy, so we call it SWAPy. Because there's so much cross-functional collaboration and workflow in that department, we really found that it was helpful to document best practices so that all different functions knew what to do in certain situations. But over time, we were adding standard work doc after standard work doc, and we weren't always vetting out the process. We were adding documents that were really helpful and useful as resource tools, but they really weren't true standards. So this left us with over 200 documents that were hard to find, unnecessary, duplicates of others, or simply out of date. And the worst part is we really had some very thoughtful documents that were great process improvements, and if we followed those processes and communicated them properly, then we would have avoided waste. But we hadn't designed auditing mechanisms, and we had poor new hire training, so the new folks, we were wondering, why aren't they even following this? Well, they didn't even know what it was, or they weren't even told about that. So over time, I was like, geez, I'm really concerned about the lack of compliance. That's where this really started, and some of the best practices that we had put into place, and following the standards, and kind of decided I'm going to reach out to the department just to see if anyone's interested in joining the team. I was floored by the interest. I mean, I've done this before, and it's like, crickets, hello, does anybody want to be on this team? I had actually so many people that came to me and said, I can't stand this process, or I could never find anything with this. I'd love to be on your team. I actually had to filter it out and determine, well, this might turn into an A3. I wasn't sure, but picked people who at that time needed an A3, thinking that's kind of how I filter it out. So this team was formed to determine how to clean up and ensure compliance of the true standard work docs. So our team members include Kevin Bollard, Chris Ferguson, who's on our screen, Julie Vickers, Gina Beggs, Jenica Berry, Scott LaBerge, and me. And I think maybe Julie and Gina are going to talk about the chaotic process that was.
Yes, so I'll take you through our current state. When we first met to discuss this process, we knew it was unorganized, but we really didn't know the full extent to how unorganized it was and why there was little to no compliance until we really dove into it. So when we started mapping out our process, we listed out, what is the current process, which we found was first identifying that there was a need for a best practice, and once the person had identified that there was a need, many times they would do so by either looking on the R drive, sometimes not even knowing that there was an R drive with standards, or not searching at all because of the time involved due to the naming conventions and how poorly their documents were named, just not knowing what the functions of the document was. So after identifying that need for the best practice, they were supposed to research, how we're going to, develop this process to make it an improvement, and how we're going to document this. But many times there were steps skipped during the research process, so they would either not research, they would run with what their idea was and say, this is the best practice without any kind of feedback or collaboration with the peers. So that obviously posed a problem because things were not well thought out, there were steps missed, and so then your incomplete processes are now on the R drive out there for people to use, and there was confusion not being able to complete a process that, from beginning to end. After researching or not researching, they were supposed to create an idea generation card at this time on Trello, and a lot of times this wouldn't even happen. It would happen 6 months down the road, or once the process was once the process was complete. But if they had put it up at the time after they researched what needed to take place, then it would have helped put out there, visibility for others, knowing that this is something that's being worked on, and then it would kind of lead towards collaboration, because a lot of times, we get notifications on Trello if, somebody's put up an idea, and then you can kind of be like, hey, I saw you're working on this, here are my thoughts, where are you at with this, and it kind of just opens up that, communication line with your peers, and you get a lot of good information from that. But because that wasn't always used or created in that step of, stage of the process, then it didn't allow for that communication or collaboration to happen. But if they created their idea generation card, then they would move on to selecting the process that would be best practice. And a lot of times with this, it was skipped because, like I said before, people would kind of be like, this is the process, this is, there was no options. It was, we're going to create this new standard, and it's going to be my idea and how I think this is going to improve things without actually going through and researching. But after the selecting the process phase, we had a draft stage, and this is where they would draft out their template. They would use the standard template or not use it on the R drive, and a lot of times they weren't using the template, and we found that when we were going through our documents and reviewing everything, a lot of them weren't in the template, so we were running into things like that. We didn't know who had created this document, so it was hard to track back. But if they used the template, then they would draft it out, and this is where they kind of start the process of testing. So I'm going to let Gina take you through the rest of the process of the current state.
All right, the next two steps, testing and then making adjustments to your process as necessary, are very important steps within the process, and these are the ones that are most often skipped. Once somebody comes up with their grand idea, if they collaborated with other people, they figured that the collaboration that happened was kind of like their testing phase, and they didn't do any tests to see what the end result would be. They would move straight on to doing their final draft. Once they created the final draft of the standard work, it was then up to the associate to add that to the R drive, and then to communicate within the huddle to share the information with their coworkers. And so when they would go to the R drive to post their standard work, there was one public and one private. Which one do you put it in? They were just not even realizing that we had two repositories, and they were dropping them in whichever one they found first. So when we collectively as a team we went through to go through standard work, it took us probably halfway through, and then we said, oh, did you guys realize that there's another R drive private that has some of these standard work documents and new? So we had to kind of bring both of those together to go through everything. Another issue that we ran into was because some people did not put it on the template when we were going through standard work documents, sometimes we just couldn't identify who the original author was.
Or even figure out what the process meant.
Right.
Even, like, I don't even know what this is.
So
Who did it?
we went back to Rachel and we picked her brain an awful lot, and thank goodness she was on the team, because a lot of times she'd go, oh, I think that was so-and-so, we can try them first. And so it made it hard for us to go through all of the documents. Sharing within the huddle, sometimes within the process of the huddle, some huddles meet once a month. If you have a document done, it could be close 3, almost 4 weeks before you were sharing it with your coworkers. And in the meantime, somebody else could have said, oh, this is a need. Now we had duplicates of documents out there for the same process. They just named them differently. So the communication was also difficult. How do you communicate a change or a new process? And when do you do that? Afterwards, they were supposed to go in and complete their Trello card, and sometimes that card was probably even completed way back when they first made it. Oh yeah, I'm almost all the way through this, and they completed the card, and it would have done better if they had waited until the whole process was over to complete that. Next in line is Christopher, and he's going to take it from here talking about problems and events.
Hi everyone, and all of you. In order to really appreciate the impact of this project is going to have, it's important to understand the problems and of course the effects that the before conditions had was accessible to anyone, but some folks chose to keep them in their own private drives, keep them on their desktops. So because of those multiple storage points, when corrections, updates, and improvements were done, it was hard to actually update the documents consistently. One of the other problems with the network drive and having the documents stored there was the fact that if you were traveling, if you were outside the network, you didn't have access to Citrix or VPN, you unfortunately did not have access to any of those documents. So if you were trying to work remotely or on the road, the best practices were not available for you if you were trying to get something accomplished. Because the documents were stored on the network drive, the only really indexing option that was available was an Excel spreadsheet. Because of that, it gave you, it was an Excel spreadsheet that actually had an index of every document out there. We found that only 2/3 of the actual statement of works were on that spreadsheet, and you had very limited or no search capability for your actual documents when you came to look for them. Because you couldn't find the right document or the correct version of the document, whatever you could get your hands on was what the program manager or assistant program manager used, which, caused work stoppage, it caused rework because the right practices weren't followed. So it caused a lot of problems within the supporting department of corporate programs. And with the R drive and having everyone have access, it did give you the ability to move documents, rewrite documents, and rename documents without anyone's approval. And, one of the things that I had faced, and, I was very, very happy, very proud to be on this team because one of my pain points when I started with Geiger was trying to get up to speed as quick as possible on the account I had. And thank God I had Julie and my supporting peers in corporate programs, but I struggled in order to find some of these documents because people had moved them, people had renamed them, or and you just couldn't access the information. With the naming, the nomenclature actually didn't match the document. So, I was searching for a document that on how to peel an orange, but it was actually called citrus extraction. So it was very difficult for someone to actually find the actual document they need to get the job done as efficiently and as clean as possible. So, and everyone in the department faced that. And the other thing was we had other departments who shared these documents because our work overlapped, and it was difficult for them to find the appropriate standards as well. Because there was no formal review and approval process, there was really no accountability for the best method and the best practices, and there was really no notification, a formal notification process for when standard works were being updated, moved, changed, or corrected. As Julie and Gina mentioned before, there was no consistency with the formatting. So whenever you open a document, document A may look completely different from document B, C, and D, and it made it very difficult to actually follow the actual standard works. And the other thing we found was because of the storage process and because of the nomenclature being free-form, there was actually multiple documents for the same process. So, and every single one of them actually had nuances that were different. So, again, it was folks were working on the correct documents and causing rework and work stoppage. And then, the standard work process and the R drive as a whole, there was no formal training program on how to use these documents, finding these documents, and what it actually meant when you're going through your initial training in the first 2 weeks. So, it was very difficult for someone who was onboarding to actually get into the group and follow the proper standards and processes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenica, who's going to go through the future state.
And here with the future state, we're going to show the processes of creating, submitting, and finalizing a new standard document. First, an associate will identify a need for best practice that can come from a pain point that they're having in some sort of process they're going through, or it's a new associate, a new process, or some sort of new function that's been established. The standard work team will then create their card for them, where before they would sometimes do it, sometimes not. This way we're controlling that portion. They they will then, the associate will research, select, and draft the process. And we encourage them and basically we're encouraging them to collaborate with other team members. That way they're getting different points in there, and then next we will note the card is implemented. And then as part of the plan, do check act process, we will have them completely test the process with third-party testing as part of the calibration as well, and they'll make any adjustments as needed for the process after the testing. Next, we'll create the final standard work document and submit it to our team. We will then name the file, upload the document to GNet, and communicate the new standard to the department or the necessary functions that need. And we will comment on the card that's completed. Finally, the standard work team will audit. Well, we've determined that not all processes necessarily need to be audited, but at the time we'll determine if it has to be audited, and I think we're on every other year type of basis. And next, we'll have Scott with kind of
I can add to that a little bit. So when we implemented standard work, one of the things we wanted to do was empower people to find the best practice. So we didn't want them to always have to go to their managers and always have to say, is this the best process? Because we wanted them to figure it out on their own and feel empowered to make the changes necessary in their own individual areas. What we found though is developing this, so this standard work team is going to be ongoing forever, and members can come and go and rotate out. Jeff has graciously agreed to take my position on the team with the restructure of some things. It makes sense that he's on it and I kind of move off it, but it's going to be something that's ongoing. So we don't have managers that are approving it, and this team really isn't going to be approving, but we needed, I guess we call it a board of overseers. So we definitely need someone to help and to guide. So throughout this, when they throw something out to the standard work team, and just recently we implemented this, and we kind of tag team, and Julie and I caught one that needed some improvements. Gina and Jenica are working on one now where it's like, geez, we've already got this. So we search for the duplicates, we help them figure out what you need to do. Is this really what you're doing, or do you want to add it to the current document? Here's the owner of the current document. Now you go work with that owner and then come back and tell us how you want us to do. So we're guiding through that process to kind of make sure everything is okay. And then once we're doing the steps as they outline it, we are determining, is this just a useful reference document? Doesn't need to be audited, it's not mandatory, it's not really a standard work. And boy, this team struggled. We had Jason come in 2 or 3 times. We must have had 3 different meetings an hour. Well, what is a standard work? And is this a standard work? And should this be in there then? And maybe we should move it out. And boy, and finally we just came down to, what we really want to think about is, does this need to be followed? Is it determined that this process needs to be followed? And if it does, then we need to audit it for a couple reasons. We need to audit it for relevance. Is it still relevant? Or does it need to be adjusted? And then audit, is it being followed? So interestingly, we're not really even, we did an audit, they were going to talk to you about it, but we haven't really even designed the audit process yet, which is what this whole thing was supposed to be. So to me, it was fascinating that this whole thing really morphed into, we can't even get to auditing this thing because it's such a complete ever-living disaster at this point that we really need to fix the whole process. Hey, this really is an A3 because we have to go through all of these steps before we did it, so.
All right, so as you've heard so far, obviously our original process was far from ideal. There were a multitude of pain points, which gave us a lot of opportunities for improvement. So I'm going to talk about some of the countermeasures that we put into place to combat those pain points. One of the first countermeasures that we implemented was the creation of our team. And we created our team with the hope of eliminating the risk of deviating from the process, making, as Rachel kind of just described, giving people guidance, pointing them in the right direction on how to create these standard works, who to talk to, who to collaborate with to create the proper documents. So all new standard work documents now flow through our team. Existing documents are audited by the team on an annual or semi-annual basis for relevance and accuracy. We'll determine, as Rachel said, as we see them, how often they'll be audited, or if they need to be audited. In addition to that, any additions to the library or any revisions to current documents, when those are made, those announcements are sent out to the department immediately. So there's no delay in a document being available and the group knowing about it. The second thing we did was create a standardized template. As you talked about, one of the things we found was basically they used any Microsoft program they could find to create some of the documents. So it was a lot of extra work on our part to figure out who created them. So this gives us that consistent formatting across all the documents. Next, we created our standard work group email. We take turns auditing that email inbox on a monthly basis, I believe. And whoever's responsible is providing that guidance or working with the team to answer the questions or any of the other information that comes through that email inbox. Then, as part of the audit, we came up with a naming system, a standard naming system for the standard work documents. And our goal here is obviously a little more consistency in the document naming and making the documents easier to find. By far, the number one, as you'll see at the end, the number one reason most people weren't using it is because they couldn't find anything. And like Chris said, it was named something that you would never even thought of. So that was done for that. And then we created a centralized directory for all of our documents once we finished naming them. And our goal there was to reduce or eliminate the time that was wasted in trying to find the documents. So this led us to move that repository of information from the R Drive to the GNet platform. And on the GNet platform, it's just like a website. We have expanded search capabilities. They can search by folders, keywords, names, anything, and that we've added multiple keywords that exist in the document so that if someone is looking for sales order information and they put in sales, every document that has sales in it is going to come up. So much easier to find and narrow down the documents you're looking for. And also the GNet platform gives us, allows us to limit access to viewing only, so no one can go in and grab a document and make any changes without notifying anybody or making sure that those are the correct changes. And only team members have access to maintenance or uploading new documents. And then the last thing we did is we talked to the department managers and asked them to add the standard work process to the new hire training schedule. It'll be a roughly 30-minute training, and it'll be conducted by someone on the audit team. Basically just to give them a foundation of where to find the standard work documents, how to search, and I believe that we have a little, I think,
Yeah, I can touch on it.
yes, Julie's already been through one, but we have a little homework assignment that is required and I used.
Yeah, I'll touch on that real quick. So for the training, it's about 30 minutes, and I've gone through this onboarding once so far and got really good feedback from Brandy, who was the new hire at the time. And one of the documents that's out there that we're kind of giving as homework to go find, to use GNet to get familiar with it, is the phone greetings, because it is something that we're trying to, make sure people are updating on a weekly basis or daily basis, depending on how they want to do it moving forward. But there's, so we're kind of in the training going over how to use, the platform to find the documents, and we are kind of going over some of like the ones that are general review of some of the different positions that would apply to everybody, but then we can kind of like hone in on, what would be like crucial for an APM is, sample, how to place a sample order, they do a lot of that, and different things like that. So we can kind of customize it for roles, but we do have like some general ones that we kind of go over for everybody. And then after we show it and kind of go over to the training, we say, okay, go back to your desk, find the documents, using GNet, and your first homework assignment will be to update your phone grading, and this is something that you'll wanna do. That way then, it's something that we're kind of trying to push as a standard, process of updating the phone gradings, anyways, and it gets them, familiar with how to search and find it.
It's also part of our audit too, because it makes sure that it's written in a way that someone that's new to the, department is able to follow it without too much instruction, so.
One other thing with the old GNet platform is, so with this whole audit, I know we haven't completely solidified our process of auditing, but it's been mentioned that we've identified the documents that need to be audited. So once we identify it, we actually tag it on GNet. So our tag is like A19, so it means that, okay, in 2019 we need to audit these ones, or A20, so in 2020 we need to audit these. And so we have this tagging system, so you can search by a tag in GNet. So we can search by all A19 and it pulls up our list. And then after we audit it, we remove that tag and update it to when it needs to be audited again. So it is kind of a way to keep up with it, through our tag system. That is something that we added to our GNet platform and to this process. And also you can search all the documents, not just by their name, which is what you kind of had to do when we were on our drive, but you can search by keywords, because every document we've gone through and reviewed the whole process, and we've identified keywords that are outside of the naming convention. So, if it's an assortment word, there's other keywords that we put in there, so if somebody might not think assortment, then there's something else that we think that they've caught, by using keywords. So we've added those keywords too, so, some people might not call it the same process, but it's either by the name or by these keywords, so that should help improve the searching functions of
Or
this.
by the job.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Sorry, anyways.
Thank you, Julie. So that's pretty much it for our countermeasures and the results of those countermeasures. So Kevin is going to wrap things up for us.
Alright, now on to the indicators and schedule. The first thing we wanted to do was get an idea of the pain points that existed with the current platform that we were using. So we wanted to get feedback from the day-to-day users that we're currently using standard work documents. What we did is we started with sending out a survey to corporate programs with a couple of general inquiries. The first thing we wanted to identify was the before condition. Figure out what we were dealing with and what areas really needed to be improved upon. The end result of that was the before condition was basically completely chaotic. It created a lot of questions, it created a lot of duplicate content. In the end, it created a lot of lost dollars and excessive time spent and rework done due to the board infrastructure that was in place. With the SurveyMonkey questionnaire that we had sent out, our main focal point of the questionnaire was really to get an idea of people's impression of how well the standard work doc was already organized and how it worked for them. As you can see from the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very organized, our average score was a 4.54 in regards to the feedback that we received for organizational ability of the current process. We had inquired about what things would help the process or improve searching for standard work doc, and as you can see, the majority of people, about 83% came back saying some type of naming mechanism, searchability, tags, keywords, would drastically improve that process across the board. Some of the pain points that were highlighted during that process were, as you can see, things as simple as emailing a new standard work doc is not training and doesn't create appropriate accountability. People would like to see general information stored separately from standard work docs. That's where we got into the review of a reference sheet compared with standard work doc. The thing that Chris had mentioned in regards to online access, static documents on an internal shared drive is cumbersome when traveling and really difficult to locate, so that was definitely a pain point. Better organized folders, tags, keywords. As you can see, it was very consistent type of feedback that we were getting. Our starting point for this process was based off that initial organizational
though we were a little depressed with 4.5, I was very happy with 4.5 because that told me this is valuable area to improve. So it isn't just us that's thinking that this is a horrible process, it's the entire department. And it was really, really nice to see those comments kind of solidify what we were thinking too. But a lot of the improvements that we made came from the team. So this team really represented what the entire department wanted. It was a great way to do it.
So what we did, obviously, after we had launched the GNet platform, we sent a notification out to corporate programs. We gave them, I think it was 2 weeks to test out the new platform, and then we basically went back with a similar survey, basically saying, okay, now that the process improvements have been put in place, what would you rank the current platform that we're using on GNet? As you can see, our final score was an 8.2 overall. There were indications that we have about 75% of the department uses the standard work docs once a month or more frequently, which again just emphasized the importance of making sure that we had a resource that was valuable and efficient for everybody. So with the 8.26 final score, that basically means we met our target of the 8, by 100%. The next step to that, along with the indicators, were the compliance aspect of it. The before condition was really unknown. We didn't have any real information to go off of. Really what we were doing is we were hoping for the best with the process that we had in place, but we had no real structure to make sure that we did have the best process. Some of the compliance improvements that the team did put together to improve the overall process is the creation of the standard work audit team, which we have here. We created the GNet directory, which allowed us to have one platform that was usable by everybody with keywords and tags and a searchable option. We created the standard work doc template, which again just made it a uniform process when submitting a new standard for approval, and just making sure that it was consistent in regards to the format and layout regarding whatever standard you happen to open at that time. And then also the new hire training, which Julie elaborated on a little bit, that is now built into the training process for corporate programs employees. It takes about a half hour. With that, our after condition for compliance with the GNet platform being limited, being locked where no changes can be made or revisions to any standard work doc. With the training, with implementation, we'll be looking at 100% compliance once we move forward with all of that. The schedule the schedule for the indicators. We sent out the initial survey back in May of 2017, sent out the follow-up survey in March after the GNet platform was launched. We initially mapped out our current state again back in May. We figured out the ideal state that we're looking to get to at the end of June. We did spend about 5 months reviewing all of the documents. There were over 200 documents that we did go through one by one. Literally in every Excel line item we opened, we
It was
reviewed,
very painful.
we printed, we found the owners, we updated anything that wasn't in a new template, we updated to the template so that everything was consistent moving forward. We uploaded all of those new standard work docs and reference sheets to the GNet platform throughout the beginning of this year, January, February. We basically built that platform with all of those documents. The formal rollout was in February of this year, and then as previously mentioned, all of the standard work docs that are relevant to the audit process have been tagged accordingly, and will be audited through, I believe, 2019 is the start of that process, and then will be an ongoing continuation from there. In the end, that is all.
So what's interesting now is the work that the team was going to initially do back last March of 2017, which is potentially stealing the audit process from Total Care, is now beginning. So that's what's gonna be ongoing. Our next meeting, we need to invite Tara to it so she can explain how Total Care is conducting their audits. They have a pretty slick way of doing that. But we've already audited for now, so we don't need to audit again until 2019. But that was a long, painful process. I think we got rid of 50 of them, at least about 50 documents that were no longer needed, merged a couple others. We renamed them all, we tagged them all.
When you say audit process, is that auditing whether the document is needed or auditing the work itself to see that the steps are appropriate?
Both. So when each of those comes up for review, we will consider if it needs to be looked at, send it to the owner, is this still valid? Is all the steps in it still valid? Sometimes the team can figure that out on its own depending on how simple it is.
There are certain obvious ones that are like very specific to a program. You know, if the program has gone away or for some reason has changed, then obviously that one's no longer needed. But I think that's definitely the plan is to audit, send it to the owner, is it relevant, and then take it a step further and have the process followed to make sure it's still.
And that's the tricky part, is compliance of the actual process, so that's not the compliance that we're noting here, it's compliant. And that was the thing that I was most concerned about, is these things aren't being followed. And come to find out, I was wrong. It wasn't because people didn't want to follow them, it was because they didn't understand them, they couldn't find them, they didn't know, they didn't even know there was an R drive, because they were hired in the last few months, and we never even trained them on it. So a lot wrong with the process before we could even start this piece of it.
If somebody does find a document and to follow it with their new person or whoever is on the program, and they run into a question, is there something on the document that say, who do they go to?
The owner is right at the bottom of that,
Right there.
and the date of when it was done, and if it was adjusted, the date and who adjusted it. Because some of the documents we adjusted them just because we had some knowledge. So we were strategic, because we had a couple program managers, someone outside. Gina was a very great addition to this team. She knows she's in corporate programs, but not in our area, so she had a really good perspective. We had inventory, we had another program manager, I oversaw the operations, so yeah, it was kind of a mishmash of everybody.
And we have an email address that was created as well for the Standards Work team to be able to funnel off that communication directly to the team in regards to any questions on an active standard or any inquiries regarding the process.
And so they're not having to remember who's on the team, as that will be changing, it's just one email address that will come to all of us, and if there's changes to the personnel on the team, then, we just change them behind the scenes, so they're not having to keep up with numbers. But they can email us, and then we all have access to it. We also have assignments on who's doing, who's taking on the role of reviewing the documents each month, and uploading them to GNet, so we kind of have a schedule for that as well, but we all have access to the email, and we have our regular meetings as well.
Rachel, is all the stuff in the archive gone? Did you guys pull that stuff away, or is there
Not
backup?
pull it away, because we were a little
Yeah.
Leery about doing
nervous.
it, yeah.
Because what happens if I can't get to Gina? Like if Gina,
So there's backup still on the hard drive, everything's still there, we left the Excel document there as well, that was the directory, we added to the directory with our own notes as well, but everything will still continue to be on the hard drive, we just won't be,
I think you can lock that out, can't you? So
we have to talk about
we're
that.
still working
next
through with
steps,
that,
yeah.
But the documents are there because of the fact that, GNet might,
Yeah, I've been trying to pull it up for a half hour now. Are the docs on GNet, are they actually Word docs?
they are, so
Okay.
when you open up GNet, there is, a corporate program section and then standard work, you'll go into that and then you can search by what you need, or you can click folders, by it's, by functions, so like warehousing stuff or PM. whatever, you can pick it, and then there's a link that you just click on, and it downloads the Word document, so it'll download it to your computer. You can make edits to it, but there's no way you can upload that document again to GNet.
Is it in, do you know what type of doc, is it the newest format for Word docs, or is it like just old DOC? You know how it was the
It's a
DOC
DOC,
X, or is it DOC, you guys know?
I
You
can't
guys
remember if
standardize
it's DOC X.
that stuff too? Just curious.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, it might be DOC
Thank you, Peter.
X, I think. And then the template, like our standard work template is also on GNet. And we have it tagged, so it's one of the first ones that you see at the top of that page when you go to it, along with the instructions on our new standard work process. So we have a standard on our standard work, and that's tagged at the top too. So it explains, okay, here's, the steps of creating a new standard and who to send it to for vetting before you get started.
So what do you guys do in a situation where, for example, somebody writes a piece of standard work, and the reason they're writing that piece of standard work is because they're dictating what they need from other people? Or, for example, we're moving the eBlast requests are going to come out of Google Docs and be through GNet now. And I've downloaded the standard work template, and I'm writing out the SOPs and trying to follow all the rules, in the format provided. But I mean, I guess, how would you vet that? Because that's me saying this is what I need in order to do your eBlast stuff. Like, is that just a special circumstance where you just say, okay, Rob, that's what you need?
So we're just gonna make sure that you vetted that out with everybody that might complain about it later, that's all.
Well, they can complain all they want. I'm telling them this is what we need in order to get it done.
Yeah, and depending on the standard, we may ask for you to get approval from your manager on those types of things that impact other people, because we don't want the standard work team to be involved in any of that. We're not okaying, determining. We're just helping you make sure that it's done in a way that everybody can follow and no one has issues with. It's rare that we found someone want to do something similar to that, where they've had pushback for reasons that aren't real, like this is gonna cause an issue, so all we're gonna do is just suggest that you talk to those people who have those issues so you can come to an agreement, so that when you're ready to do it, no one is really surprised at it and everybody is excited that, hey, now I have this process that I can just follow.
I think we look at it more like our job is to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. And you're not just creating something that works for you, but might not work for Bob, and Laura. It's got to work for the entire group.
You don't want something that's suboptimal. I mean,
Right,
it might work
exactly.
Perfect for you, but it might be a
And so
detriment to other areas.
us as a team, we're not going to know if that's the ideal process. You're the one that knows that.
Right.
But we need to make sure that you're using all your tools and seeing all the people that it affects and bringing them into your.
Yeah, so we're making sure that all of that is done. So it could be, well, what we suggest is grab a program manager, grab a graphics guy, grab a this, and kind of have them represent their areas and make sure this isn't going to negatively impact anyone. And maybe you talk about it in huddles beforehand. We did that with the International Work Doc where 4 APMs have some extra tasks to do. And before we rolled it out, I would not roll it out until all those APMs that we said, this is what we're doing, before you have a heart attack, is this gonna be a big problem? And we actually made a tweak to it based on some feedback before we rolled it out. We thought it was ready to go, and so we had a little bit of homework to do there. So it's making sure that it can be followed.
And we kind of did the training part of that too. So it was more of a conversation. Hey, this is the process. What's your feedback? And they kind of had some, there were a couple of things that they had questions on, whatever. But it was also utilizing that opportunity to kind of train them on this new process, because they took something that was a customer service function and put it as an APM function, and so it's a whole new role for the people involved. So it was a way to get them kind of up to speed at the same time of getting feedback. And then, once we had that feedback, we made any tweaks necessary, and then we rolled it out. So, I mean, they were all in the loop during the training process too, of the adjustments made and communicated out.
did you guys have any pushback at all on any of the changes? Because, I mean, everybody has their own opinion. That's kind of like, Jason knows what I'm going through, but that's kind of partly what I'm going through right now. So I'm just kind of curious to see how you guys go.
Changing from our drive to GNet or?
No, just overall, any of the standard work documents.
Yeah, we didn't. They were very favorable. The only challenge we had was during the audit process, having people realize that when you own a document, the word own means something.
Yeah.
So they would push it back onto someone else or say this, that, but this stuff, I mean, people were thrilled with these changes.
Yeah, I mean, we had to reach out to a lot of people during this process to, owners of documents to get them to, review, let us know if it's still relevant, update if there's any changes or whatever. But everybody was open and willing to help during that. There wasn't really any pushback on that. It did take some people a little bit longer than others to get us the information, but at the same time, we had a lot of work ahead of us, so we just continued on while we were waiting and noted them, so we knew what we need to go back to.
We've already run into a couple of, 3 people in this room ran into a situation where we've had a question on a process. And I happened to be the one that was actually trying to follow it. And when I questioned it, we ended up having, as Rachel and Michelle and I, and getting together and hashing out any changes that need to be made before we revise it and send it back. And so those were the parties involved, and they got together we got together to make sure that everybody felt that they were doing what they needed to be doing.
And he knew, because Rochelle's name and my name were at the bottom of that document as the owners of that document, so he knew who to reach out to. And we met, and within 15 minutes, we improved that document and added something at the end of it, and it was great.
But we've also had somebody who submitted a new standard work. When you were watching the inbox the first month, that was a duplicate of something that was already there. And then went with just, 2 lines maybe that changed the process. And when she submitted it, I went to speak with her, and that wasn't her intention at all. Her intention was for something completely different. And so I said, well, this isn't your process then. This is. So she resubmitted again this month.
And I think it would be a good eye-opener for the department overall too, because I think people are now aware that there's going to be accountability, and potential scrutiny with a new standard that is presented, to be added. I think a lot of times what we notice in regards to a lot of duplicate and stuff is that the standard work doc a lot of times is attached to the green dot. So in order to get the green dot, you got to create the standard work. So it was really, I think people were impulsive to create the standard work doc, to be able to have the green dot accounted for. So I think a lot of the trial and error and the scrutiny of the process wasn't necessarily as thorough as it needed to be, as much as it was more to get the credit for the idea generation part of it.
And to your point, Rob, it's a balance for sure. Because some people were like, well, this is the way I want to do it, and I want to get a green dot, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to add it. And, I may tell people, or I won't tell people, but it's there. And then other people, this person 3 months later sees the document, they're following it. It didn't really work well, but 4 other people aren't because they don't know about it because it wasn't communicated, and it's just so confusing. We did decide that so if there was one that kept coming up, I keep using it, so someone's like, here's a standard work doc. Here are the 4 different UPS account numbers we use at Geiger. That's not a standard work doc, but is it useful? Sure. Some people may really want to know A38XX is used for this and 193 blah blah is used for this. So it's a reference. It was never written. The person's going to get a green dot because they documented interesting information that's useful. Now, we determined this doesn't need to be audited. It doesn't really need to be. It's not, it's useful there. We're seeing much less of that now than we used to, but yeah, so it's a balance.
I think this team did a great job, and the one thing that I like about it is that often we see a project, or we're involved in a project, and we go through the process and we fix it all up, and then we walk away and never touch it again. So one of the huge
concepts for continuous improvement is sustaining, right? It's one of the success things, and so it sounds like you built in a lot of measures to help sustain your process so it doesn't fall apart again, because that's what I see frequently, is it's something that looks great, and then you look at it a year down the road, and all of a sudden it's like falling apart again, and you have to start from scratch. So building in those sustainability features into the process is what's going to carry you a long way, and commend you for doing that part of it. Sounds like a lot of really hard, grueling work.
I'll be the first to admit, I never used our standard work procedure when the old state.
Yeah.
I always went to Jenica if I needed something, or CPI, it was so difficult to find a document that it wasn't worth my time to even search. I tried it a few times, could never find what I wanted, but I'm not even gonna bother. I'll go ask Jenica how to do it. I'll go ask Amanda how to do a sales order, something like that. And
Use it now.
oh yeah, and if we did anything in this group right, establishing GNet and moving things there, that was probably the number one task that we.
I'm stealing a lot from you guys, I'm not gonna lie. I can use a lot of this. Some of it we've already started. With the auditing, we didn't have, we had talked about moving everything to GNet. The Survey Monkey, I really thought that was a really cool idea. That way you kind of know what everybody's dealing with and what everybody's pain points are. Because when we started ours, we used sticky notes. So we had sticky notes all over the place. So I'd rather use point or the Survey Monkey. But yeah, this is great. It's good stuff.
Chris, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to say something if, since you're at home and just been patiently listening.
Yeah, no, I'm just taking all in. Like I said before, I just feel I was very lucky to be selected for this group, and I think it's very fitting now that I have moved on from corporate programs. I'm just very happy and excited that I was part of a team in a project that led something that's very useful and impactful and will benefit the department and all of those new hires. So I'm very appreciative and thankful. So.
Oh, you're gonna make Julie cry because she misses you so much already, and I get to keep it.
I can honestly say I would have never survived and never made it if I didn't have her. So.
Congratulations.
All right, congratulations, guys.